Hey guys, this is Kishore. Is this the TechPod IT hotline?
Yeah, what do you need help with?
I'm having a kind of unusual problem. I can't quite get Outlook to work up here.
Well, that Outlook it doesn't really work anymore. It's not a thing people use. I'm sorry.
But I'm using a Surface Pro. Shouldn't Outlook just work on a Microsoft product?
Which, is it old Outlook or is it new Outlook?
Oh, how do you tell? It's ugly. Does that help?
No, that's just Outlook. That's how it's supposed to be. Let's see. How many copies of Outlook do you have running at this moment?
I have 2 open, and there's so many instances listed in the task manager, I don't know what to do.
Let me call Brad over at the IT console, see if he has a script you can run.
It says here that we don't support Outlook in low Earth orbit, actually.
I heard that Outlook was to be used for entertainment purposes only. It's like all Microsoft products. We're just it's Outlook is only for entertainment, not for real use. Yeah, space, man, the final frontier, the IT channels of the starship Intrepid. No, that's not it. What is it? Intrepid?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What do they call? What's the name for the capsule?
Orion is the capsule.
Well, but that's the brand. They named it.
Oh, this specific one has a name?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hold on. I can't believe I've listened to this literally 1,000 times over the last week, and I don't remember what they call it. It's not on the website either.
It's almost like they might have relied on Copilot to build this website in addition to Outlook to send emails.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about space. Well, hold on. We'll do that in the intro. Kishore, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be back, and good to be back on Norman Will Make a Tech Pod.
Oh, nope, that was last week.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, it's somebody else.
Replaced that quickly.
Oh, the dulcet tones are back. I feel at home.
Yeah, we welcome back, Brad, but it's good to have you back. I hope you feel better.
I'm here and slightly more cyber than when I left.
It's Integrity is the name of the capsule, just FYI, not Intrepid. So, yeah, the Integrity, well, we'll talk about it. But yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's just start the show. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
And joining us today, as you guessed from the cold open, is one Kishore Hari. Welcome back to the show, Kishore.
It's great to be back, and good to be back in a moment of scientific achievement.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we said when we were like, should we do an Artemis episode this week? And like, I think it was just like, it'd be nice to have a topic that's just kind of uplifting for once.
Yeah, and Kishore, you were for a while the harbinger of doom when you came on the show. So it's exciting to have you here to talk about something fun for a change.
Hey, it's only early in the podcast. Like, doom might still come for us all before the end.
I managed to sneak a little bit of cynicism into the show notes, so we'll see.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Artemis 2 today. And there's a lot around Artemis that's hinky, I guess, from a politics sense. Like, we're defunding science across the entire federal government and spending a ton of money going to the moon, which people have questions about. I'm excited about going back to the moon for a whole multitude of reasons, most of them not related to politics. But yeah, I'm curious, kind of like, this is the first crewed SLS flight, which if you'd asked me 10 years ago if I thought it was going to happen, I would have probably said they're never going to launch an SLS rocket because it seemed like a congressionally created boondoggle designed to fail. So like, I guess this is a victory. It's like this is US rockets taking astronauts to space, not on private stuff, and going beyond low Earth orbit for the first time in my lifetime, like literally my lifetime. I walked out last Thursday night with my daughter and my wife, and I looked up at the stars and I said, "Hey, kiddo, you and I have something in common that today is the first day we can look up at the moon and see people on the way to the moon in our lives." She's like, "Wait, that's never happened for you before either?" It's like, no, they went in 1972. I wasn't born yet. So, Yeah, it's wild.
I have to admit, I was caught off guard by this in the sense of how I reacted to it, because I also shared some cynicism. Like, Artemis has been plagued by delays and interference, like technical delays with like the rocket design. There's been a lot of issues with the SLS rocket stage having, hydrogen leaks, and it's been 3 years since there's really been launches, and just really a giant rocket sitting on a pad for a long time. And so it's hard to imagine getting here where we have some really amazing crewed flights, but I was caught up in the emotion of it. And it's partially because, I saw Project Hail Mary a week ago, and I was caught up in the hope core of that moment. And then you hear the astronauts talk, and you're like, damn, they are better than me. They are so cool. They are so uplifting, and they recognize just the wonder of the trip. Now, that isn't to say that this trip isn't fueled by politics, just like Apollo was. Apollo was sent because of the space race and Yuri Gagarin making it to space, and that fueled all of the resources that poured into the Apollo mission. We're not in a terribly different place here. Artemis is largely fueled in part by China and Russia making trips to the South Pole of the moon via robotic landers. And in China's case, after the success of the Chang'e mission a couple years ago, actually having a plan in the next 15 years to land a crew in the South Pole of the moon. So this is part of the politics of the space race that was true in the Apollo mission and now here in Artemis. But at the same time, it just feels incredible to see this kind of human achievement take hold, even though it feels a little different than Apollo.
Like, I've seen From Earth to the Moon, so I assume that everybody is going to the South Pole of the moon because they're big fans. But is that it, or is there some other reason they want to be on the South Pole?
The South Pole of the moon is the one that is the most shaded, so you'll generally have 2 weeks of sunlight, 2 weeks of darkness at the South Pole. It's the most likely spot, and we have science to verify this, where there'll be water ice. So if you're looking to have a habitat on the moon and you need water to help sustain humans living there, to split into hydrogen and oxygen to make fuel and a breathable atmosphere, that's going to be the place to go. There's also indication from numerous probes that is where helium-3 exists on the moon. Helium-3 is not something that exists in significant supply here on Earth, and we can't make it, and is a key component to things like medical imaging. And it is a tremendous resource that many countries are interested in developing technology to mine and return to the Earth.
You also need that to trigger the mass relay drives, so I recall, right? That's an important component of that.
That's why we have to get to Mars to get all that Prothean tech so we can start doing faster. Actually, I was going to ask, I pulled up, there's a Wikipedia page entitled Space Policy of the First Trump Administration, which basically has the text of all the various space policy directives that were issued several years ago. So in addition to the kind of low-key saber rattling you're talking about toward like China and Russia, there's a lot of language in these directives about investors, private industry, space commerce, et cetera, et cetera. You can, plus, all the privatization going on around SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these companies, like is extraction and like kind of paving the way for private commercial interests, do you think also maybe a secondary driving force here, or is this where my cynicism is too much?
It's hard to tease it all out because we've seen a lot of plans from the administration around what the next 10 years of Artemis will look like. But those plans are really dynamic, and they are clearly omitting, elements of it. It is, remember the South Park episode called Underpants Gnomes? Where
there's
it's
a big question mark in the middle, and it's like land on the moon and then profit, and there's like...
yes, of course.
No.
Exactly. And like the plans are much better than that. I don't want you to think there's nothing in that question mark space, but there is a lot of question marks. So just like really briefly, like already Artemis is an example of public-private partnership. Like when you look at SLS, that isn't something NASA just made. It's like Boeing and Northrop Grumman and all of these defense contractors. They have plans for a lunar landing module that's there's competing designs from Blue Origin and SpaceX. They have designs for building a habitat on the moon, and there's numerous companies all working together on that. There's collaborations with the Canadian Space Agency on a robotic arm that's going to be key to docking the lunar lander to the space module. There's the European Space Agency is making elements of the habitat. The Japanese Space Agency is making elements of this. So it's a really complicated weave that's much more global in nature than what we experienced with the Apollo. But I think a key element of the through line of what we've heard from the administration is we have to go faster. We have to do this much cheaper than how NASA has approached these missions in the past. And we have to do it with the support of public-private partnerships, which opens up the door to what you're saying about resource extraction. But I think the main goal that I read is like, we need to get boots on the ground in these places because to establish like U.S., provenance, lack of a better term, on the area.
Okay, so good and bad mixed together. That is the TLDR there.
Yeah, I think we could save this for later, but Scientific American ran a pretty good article about some astronomical opportunities on the moon, which are kind of downstream of like, hey, there's a lot of money suddenly to get back to the moon on a regular basis. And so at least science will piggyback onto these other interests as it always has, but we can get to that toward the end.
Yeah, if you watch the Artemis press conference from a few years ago where the NASA administrator, or not a few years ago, last year, that got up there and laid out the vision for this, it's permanent human settlement where every 6 months there's a mission going up there. And with that is going to open up all sorts of opportunities for new kinds of science, because we'll be beyond the kind of atmospheric disturbance of the Earth to do different kinds of radio and other kinds of astronomy. Now, it's not the only option, but you can do some really cool stuff up there. But the first step is like, we have to be able to build, a permanent sort of outpost there to fuel that kind of work.
Two things on the uplifting quality of this whole, like what you just described. Like, I just kind of put myself in the mental place of 3 years from now, or maybe it's more than 3 years, but not too many years. Like, the idea of a launch happening every 6 months and just knowing there are people up there all the time, like, just kind of filled me with a little sense of like, oh man, like, well, good forward looking things are still possible. Like, I hope to live in a world like that.
You think about how normal people living on the ISS has become over the last 25 years, right? 26 years. Like, people have lived constantly in space for 25 years, which is, when we were kids, when we were young, was unthinkable. They were doing 3 space shuttle launches a year, and there were a couple of Russian guys that were stuck on Mir at any given time. And it was unusual to have space be constantly habituated. Yeah, sure. It's too early for long words. Should we? So this is the second Artemis flight. The first one was uncrewed. It was just go around, orbit the moon for a while, and then come back. And they were doing things like collecting radiation data and testing the ablative heat shields and like testing whether the rocket could get there and back. This one is a different trajectory. This one, they just did a free return. So like, I played enough Kerbal to understand how this works. You fire a big rocket to leave Earth orbit. You zoop around the planet, the moon once, and then you come back faster than you got there. Thanks to the miracle of gravity wells, and if we're recording this on Friday morning, if everything goes well this evening at a predetermined 6:32 p.m. Pacific time, I think they're going to hit the atmosphere, absorb a lot of heat, and splash down off the coast of San Diego after 6 minutes of radio blackout and burning off 5,000 miles per hour of speed or something like that. I can't remember how fast they're going at the actual when they hit the atmosphere. But yeah, so this is there's a bunch of things that happen for the first time on this. One is that it's the first time. Well, it's the furthest people have been from Earth. They broke the Apollo 13 record set by Jim Lovell and the crew there. It's the first time we've sent people beyond low Earth orbit in 52, 53 years, 54 years.
There's like a ton of firsts on the crew. It's like first person of color, first woman, first non-American, and oldest person, all to. I mean, they didn't land on the moon, but to orbit or be that far
to go there. Yeah.
Actually, real quick, if I could jump in, I meant to mention earlier with the crew. Do you have any sense of what their backgrounds are? Because like the Apollo missions were so uniformly like test pilots, kind of like rocket jockey, former military types. That I mean, I guess we've got the space shuttle program to draw on already there for the types of candidates they've looked for space missions. So
a lot of them
unusual.
A lot of them have backgrounds in like systems and flight engineering.
Okay.
On this, and like Christina Koch, who became an astronaut. I think I want to say like 10 years ago, and already holds the record for longest single space flight by a woman. So she's been on the ISS for a long period of time. Jeremy Hansen's from the Canadian Space Agency, and he's a fighter pilot. Victor Glover is like, a big aeronautical engineer background. So
and a naval aviator. Three out of four of them were Navy pilots or space pilots.
Still doing a fair
very
amount of
similar to the early Apollo, but this mission is as Will kind of laid out, is the trial run. So we're not going to send like scientists necessarily up for this. Like we want more of the engineering types that are going to kind of put the systems through the paces. Will, to your kind of point on the timeline of this, like this is really like an amazing feat in terms of it's a 10-day mission, which is I knew it was a 10-day mission, but the actual feeling of it being on Earth and like getting updates every day for 10 days is pretty remarkable in terms of how like I experienced that, because we weren't alive during Apollo to actually experience that kind of real time. We always like learn about it in like a 2-hour documentary or in this condensed format. So we're really getting that experience of what it actually feels like in real time to travel to the moon. And I think that's what Artemis 2 is really kind of conveying. And then Artemis 3 is actually not going back to the moon. It's actually going to do low Earth orbit maneuvers where they're going to actually dock modules together to see if we can actually have like a lunar module come off and then land. And then Artemis 4, which is tentatively 28, maybe 29, is actually going to land a module on the moon. And then they're hoping like 2032, somewhere around there, is when we're going to start to see those regular flights starting every like 6 months to 12 months. But all of that's really fungible. But this is really the big marker that we can do this, that we can make the flight there and back safely.
Hey, the rockets work. How much juice is left in the SLS when it gets to that high Earth orbit? Like they were talking last night. There was a press conference last night that they broadcast, and somebody, it might have been Eric Berger from ours, asked about how much they think they're going to be able to get out of the SLS first stage, because like it's a really huge rocket. It's first stage to high orbit, it seems like, which is crazy. And it seems like there might be more possibility to use it even for more of like the high to boost the orbit before they cut it loose. Just to give people a sense of scale, ISS is at 400 kilometers above the ground, generally 400 to 420, I think is the kind of elliptical. The moon is 384,400 kilometers away on average.
Yeah,
so
I've been struggling the last few days because I learned all of these distances in miles as a kid. I know 250,000 miles, 93 million miles, and now everybody is slowly converting to metric, and I'm having to like relearn all of my fancy numbers.
Brad, get with the program.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking. Come on, we're a kilometer crew over here now. We're talking about space.
I gotta learn the calculation in my head.
I do it in light nanoseconds. I work in universal speeds. Anyway, so they went there, other first toilet past low Earth orbit. That's been kind of a mixed bag, it seems like.
Wait, I'm sorry. What did Apollo use?
They used bags and hoses.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, they went in bags, so full on camping effect. Let's talk about the toilet really briefly. I know we're still going through first. The toilet thing, which has gotten a ton of press, is kind of interesting to me because like they thought they knew the problem, but now it's come out that they don't know what the situation is. So like the toilets function, but they can't vent them. So they're getting backed up. Oh, no. And so they initially thought that maybe some ice was forming on the vent. And so they actually did a maneuver to turn the ship towards the sun, and they used some like heating elements on the outside to melt some ice. And they saw some signs of like of some ice, probably like urine coming out. But now it continues to sort of be a problem. So they're actually not sure what's happening. Like the latest theory is that there's some biofilms that are developing that are actually clogging some filters in the toilet. So space toilet still unsettled.
Mixed bag. The fun thing about that is last night when they were packing things up, I heard them ask Mission Control, hey, how do you want us to leave the toilet? And they were like, leave it as it is because we want to be able to study it when you guys get back. Anyway, other first, let's see, solar eclipse from space, I think, which those pictures are unbelievable. I want to see the high reses of those. I think that's the high points. I think like the thing you hit this earlier, the thing that I didn't expect out of this. Well, it's the first mission they've live streamed almost the entire thing.
Yeah, so that's the thing I really wanted to ask you guys. We don't have to do a ton on this because most everybody but me has followed this stuff. But the launch happened like when I was being discharged from the hospital last week after this neck surgery. And I was like drugged for a couple days. Like the point is, I totally missed the launch. I missed like all the fanfare around. And I'm really curious because obviously the world of 1972 was extremely different in telecommunications terms from now. Like, I know they live streamed the whole thing, but I'm really curious, like, what was the experience on the ground of following this in terms of what NASA made available and, like, cool leveraging of modern streaming tech and cameras and stuff like that?
It's been unbelievable. I mean, just to be clear, they live stream the launch. They live stream almost all the launches. Everybody does that. That's old hat. The thing that I've never seen before is that they had a 24/7 live stream going on YouTube, or maybe not 24/7. I think they take breaks when the crew's asleep at night. But basically, it's like the Big Brother house. Like like they have a camera in the cabin. They have cameras mounted on the wings of the Solar's GoPros, and they're giving you a feed of that, or of mission control, or of the inside of the cabin at any given moment throughout the day, and they're overlaying the mission control, the back and forth mission control on top of that, as well as occasionally having like the NASA. Like, I don't know what their role is, but they're essentially the NASA streamer. It comes on as like, yo, what up, chat? Today we're talking about solar heating on the left side of the panel. They break down stuff like the toilet. They run NASA promotional videos. Like sometimes during breaks, last night they showed an older video of the crew tasting food, and they had a whole package about how food on the space station on the Artemis and space station work, and how they decide what meals to pack and stuff like that. By the way, Kishore, you'll like this. One of the more common breakfasts, vegetable quiche.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
See, astronauts are just better than us. They have good taste.
Yeah. But it's been like it's something I've left on in the background all day while I'm sitting at my computer working, just because it's absolutely fascinating to get this glimpse. And it was. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I watched the launch. I didn't watch a lot of the stuff post-launch. And then I tuned in when I realized they were doing the lunar flyby and they were streaming it. And like there were 120,000 or 150,000 people watching on Twitch that day. It was incredible. Like we were getting incredible footage, and you got to see how they actually worked rather than just the output of that work, which was the best part.
Yeah, I think the difference for me is sort of twofold. Like first, this is the first crewed launch of this scale that is in the kind of attention economy that we exist in. So as much as there is the feeds that Will described from NASA itself and inside the ship, there's also all like the influencers and the science communicators also doing their kind of breakdown and reaction. So no matter like where you go, there was a proliferation. Whereas I think in the 60s and 70s, you watched like Walter Cronkite like talk about what was happening, once a day. And so we're getting a real kind of intimate view in with voices that kind of resonate with you. So it's sort of like a choose your own adventure of the communication. So it's just more and how you want it. I also think like the tech inside is dramatically different. We're not dealing with like, the camera, like if you remember from the Apollo 13 movie, like, you saw the cameras that they had, the old school kind of, film-based kind of systems. We have a lot of tech on board this ship that is different. And maybe we should talk about that for a second.
Yeah, that's been getting the glimpse of that. We joked about it, the cold open with the Outlook bit, but like they had an IT call because one of their computers, I think they call them personal PTVs or personal communication systems, are Surface Pros that are seemingly tethered, hardwired, but they also have Wi-Fi on board, which is wild. One of the Wi-Fi industry blogs that pops up in my feed had Wi-Fi's been on the other side of the moon. It's been farther away than anybody else in history. They use WiGig to communicate with the service module, the ESA service module, presumably after it disconnects so that they can get feeds from it back onto the capsule, because it obviously doesn't come back to Earth. It just burns up in the atmosphere. Let's see, they have phones for the first time. NASA issued them iPhone 17 Pro Maxes a few months ago. They did a speed qual on it. Presumably, Apple said they didn't work with them directly, but presumably, like, they have all sorts of rules about batteries and stuff like that. So when they test a batch of batteries, if they have one failure in a batch, that entire batch gets canned and they go to a reliable batch.
Do you think they paid for the memory upgrade?
I would assume so. Yeah,
I hope so.
Well, they don't have cloud storage up there, so
I'm
no
fine
clouds.
with my tax dollars being used for that.
But the phones aren't internet devices. They're just using them for note taking and photos, cabin photos and videos and stuff like that.
Right, like the cameras on. Well, I mean, say what you want about the amount of like post processing that Apple does on the photos and how like quote unquote real the photos are, but like those things have amazing cameras on them, right? So like, well, it seems like a good vehicle for documenting things.
And from judging from listening, they've talked about, so to get the photos off of those, they plug them into their Surface Pros. So presumably iTunes has been to the far side of the moon now, and they're dumping them over the wire, and then they get picked up with the PTV dumps when that happens every once in a while.
I could jump in with a neat trick for you if you're on Windows and have Apple devices. They have split out. There's an app on the Microsoft Store called Apple Devices now that splits out all the like, here's what you need to plug an Apple device into Windows to get things off of it functionality from iTunes. So
that's fantastic.
There's a smaller app now called Apple Devices that you can use just to do the phone stuff if you don't care about all the so hopefully they've got that.
In case the astronauts are listening, I want them to make the IT call to being like, I want to install this third-party app. What's the administrator password for my Surface Pro?
Can you read it out over the air, please? They use it seems like they use a lot of scripts. They have a lot of scripting stuff set up to do the automated tasks, because often the astronauts will ask, hey, we're having this problem, should we run this script? And then they'll say, we're checking. There's a fascinating tenor to the communication in general, where there's one person they talk to at Mission Control, and then that person serves as the kind of like the many-armed octopus for whatever information they need on the station, in the capsule, in a matter of moments. Sometimes, like they'll ask a question, and before the Capcom gets back to them and say, okay, we got the question, we're checking on it, they'll be like, oh, okay, we got the answer, here you go, do this. So computers, phones, they everything has Velcro, because their pants all have Velcro on them. That's how they keep things close to them, obviously. They have a bunch of cameras, obviously. They brought a bunch of digital cameras this time.
So there's 28 total cameras on board, which is just insane. 15 of them are mounted on the actual Orion vehicle. And these are like, the external cameras, the ones that are focused on like monitoring their health. There's a high speed camera mounted to it. But there's 13 cameras inside that they have a lot more control of, which is really interesting. And like, 4 of those are like the actual personal computing devices that we talked about that have webcams. And so like, I hesitate to call those cameras, but they're cameras. There's 4 wireless cameras on board for the Nat Geo Disney documentary that they're doing on this. So there's a lot of footage we haven't seen yet that's going to come out in the next year or so. But I think what's interesting is they have 2 Nikon D5 DSLRs, which a lot of like the beautiful imagery that we're seeing that's like clearly taken by the astronauts, they're using the old D5, which I think came out a decade ago now.
2016, yeah.
Yeah. Not even using a mirrorless. They're going like for a full DSLR body for this because that's what NASA approved.
It's been really fun. This is definitely not my domain, but it's been fun watching camera nerds on like Blue Sky talk about like the Hasselblads that were used on the Apollo, and people kind of speaking in hushed tones about all these like 50-year-old camera designs and what they're using now and stuff. It's like a fun subset of this thing.
Well, so they used the Hasselblads because they were full frame, so you had a lot of resolution on the film, and there's still some Hasselblad photos, I believe, from the Apollo days that haven't been developed yet or haven't been really treated yet. There was some confusion. So New York Times and ours said they're using D5s. I've seen a bunch of photo blogs say they're using Z9s, which are mirrorless. I think the reason they use the the D5s is because they have that mirror, so you actually are getting eyeballs on the thing that you're looking at through the viewfinder. Like that's the reason they use those, because then they also essentially have with an 80. It seems like they like an 400 millimeter zoom for the moonshots, and that gives them essentially a 400 mil telescope that they can look through with their eyes. That's handheld, right?
I heard a much more kind of pedantic reason why is so NASA has an agreement with Nikon for the cameras. So like they had to bring a Nikon camera aboard. And I heard kind of behind the scenes, they chose the D5 because they've flown with the D5 before. And so they're like, let's not mess around. Let's just take the D5 up. And so I think the Z9 might be in the future, but they're using the D5 right now.
Everybody who's flown on the space station, which I think is 3 of the 4 astronauts, has handled the D5 and knows how to use it because that's what they've had there for years and years. So during the lunar flyby, they got 4,000 kilometers from the surface of the moon, and it was they had a process set up. It was, if you like, I think we'll put the schedule in the show notes, but the full like breakdown hour by hour of the schedule for the flight is in there. And they were doing 2 people on, 2 people off. So essentially 2 people were card wrangling and dealing with spaceship and dealing with the, like, making sure the files came up and were annotated properly. And then 2 people were up by the windows with a shroud behind them to keep glare off of their windows. And one was operating a camera shot at them, aimed at the moon, and describing physically what they saw with each shot. So what their eyes saw versus what the camera was taking. They're capturing the images, and then they're talking through what they were able to see. They're talking about things like colors on the rims of craters and things like that maybe don't come through in the photos. And the other person was there taking notes for each shot that was taken and all constantly as they went. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch that process, because it was a testament to a thing that, like, I know from working on Tested, and I know from working on different things over the years, that you're going to capture stuff with your human experience that it doesn't get captured in the recordings, it doesn't get captured in the photos. And they built NASA because their NASA built a process to capture that part of it too, which I don't recall ever hearing or seeing. Like during the 50th anniversary of the Apollo missions, I loved watching the live streams of the mission control back and forth with the Apollo astronauts. They just play the audio over stills from the images, and you get an experience of what, like what it's like when Jim Lovell and Ben, I can't remember the guy who shot Earthrise, but when they realized they had a good photo there that wasn't scheduled, and he was like, "Hey, Jim, pass me some. I need some film. color film because he had black and white film loaded in the camera as the Earth is rising over the moon when they're in orbit. And he's like, I got to get a color shot. And you can see the first shot that he took in black and white. And then you see about 15 seconds later, 20 seconds later, the moon's risen a few degrees off of the horizon. And that's how long it took him to load the color film. And meanwhile, Jim Lovell's in the background going, hey, man, you got to go faster than this. You're going to miss this shot. This is an incredible shot. It's out of that window. We got to find the other window with it. So, yeah, it's remarkable listening to him do this work, I think.
Let's actually talk about that as a bridge. Like, what have been your favorite moments? Because there's been so many things that have gone, viral that have like touched people, because of the meaning, like the true Hope Corps stuff. I'm curious what both of you are taking away so far.
For me, it's watching how, like, I love seeing how people interact with the process, right? Like, just like, it's good for my brain. Almost the mundanity of the day-to-day interspersed with the wonder of seeing a solar eclipse from the far side of the moon. And like when they came back from the blackout period and were like, hey, we saw micrometeorite flashes on the back of the moon. Like while we were there, we saw those with our eyes, which is something that probably the cameras aren't going to have picked up, right? It's something that you had to have human eyes there to see. That to me justifies the entire thing, right? Like, that feels really good and is something that is the reason that we send people to space. That's why we ask people to risk their lives. That's why we spend incredible amounts of money. It's why we do all the work that we do and have 100,000 people on the ground building these rockets and spacecraft and all that. And that to me is exciting. Also, the Nutella was good.
We'll get to the Nutella in a second. Just really quickly on the micrometeorites. The thing that got me about that is when they radioed in that they saw, like, I can't remember. I think it was like 5 of those they saw.
He said 5 flashes, yeah.
There was a geologist in Mission Control, and they had a camera like trained towards her, and you could just see her mouth just go open. Just be like, oh my God, they saw it. And just like the excitement and the enthusiasm for this thing that, like, it is so wondrous, but it, like, in the grand scheme of this mission is small. But we got to see it for the first time. I love the humanity of that moment.
Yeah,
how about you, Brad?
Speaking,
what did you see?
I like I said, I have not followed a ton of this stuff as I've been recuperating, but we certainly didn't need to send people to the moon for this. But the Carol Crater stuff was pretty touching, of course.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I enjoyed the breadth of ability to name things after people, like to pay tribute in space. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many craters on the moon. There are so many asteroids and comets and stars. Like, there's a much broader capacity to, like, honor different people in different walks of life and that sort of thing.
I think most people probably know the story, but in case somebody doesn't, the commander of the ship, when they're going on the far side of the moon, they saw a crater, and he radioed in that the crew had decided they would like to name it after his wife, who died from cancer a few years prior. And the moment that got me is when they radioed in, he spelled her name, and then all the astronauts came in and hugged him. And it's come out later that they had a meeting and they talked about this, just the 4 of them. And there's something really precious about that, like that they talked, like, essentially a week ago, and it was like, we want to do this. And that the commander, like, kind of let that happen. That was such a moment of humanity and beauty. And now, like, can you imagine if you're their kid, you can, like, when he gets back, he's going to be able to look at the moon and remember their mom together. That's the best.
Rad. Really good.
Mine was, I didn't expect this. They have a wake up playlist, and you can actually listen to it on Spotify. There's a lot of, like, kind of funny songs on it. Like, like Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan is, one of their wake up songs. But the wake up song that got me was, they woke up when they, were passing the furthest distance that any human had ever traveled. They got a posthumous message from Jim Lovell. and that was their wake up message.
Wow.
And he talked about, and he passed away last year. And so
Jim Lovell was the commander of Apollo 13 and Apollo 8, I think, right?
Yeah. And, so the Tom Hanks played him in the movie. And he's actually in the movie at the end. He salutes Tom Hanks on the aircraft carrier. And Jim Lovell speaks in that kind of astronaut way where he has experienced the overview effect of seeing Earth from space, and he gave them a message that like reinforced that, and is so note perfect that he talked about the achievement, but also the ability to like turn around and look back towards Earth in that time. So I encourage people to actually listen to that, because I think that paired with the Earthsat photo, which is basically they did an analog of the Earthrise photo, probably the most famous photo shot of Earth. They did an analog of it called Earthsat, where the Earth is setting across the moon. I think those two pair, and I was not expecting that.
No, it's been kind of remarkable. It's been incredibly remarkable, the entire thing. So, and I didn't expect to feel this way, and I didn't expect to feel this way from watching people work on computers, and it's to me, it's the fact that we're humans and we're doing stuff, but we're also doing human stuff, and the toilet breaks in space, and you still have to eat lunch, and you have to build in all this stuff into you, like even with. There's a timeline that NASA released. There's like the one that they give school kids, but then they actually posted what looks like the real one with blocks set aside for the National Geographic documentary every day, and blocks set aside to talk to the premier of Canada and senators and House members and all sorts of other different stuff, and school children and all the stuff that astronauts do. And they still have like a block of time in there for them to eat lunch and for them to have some free time, and for them to wind down after the long day on the lunar flyby when they're on the way back, so that they can be ready for the hustle and bustle of the thing. And just to be clear, astronauts coming back from the moon pack their capsule back up just like college kids do. They had a whole bunch of big, giant, thick, hefty bags last night. They were jamming all the crap that they'd gotten out over the last 10 days back into those. And they were like, hey, NASA, where do you want this stowed? And it's like, just put it behind the cargo net on C7 and we'll figure it out when you get back. It's been really, really wild to be able to watch the whole thing at that level.
One other quick question about their daily rhythm or schedule. Is there a concept of like a watch at night? Do they all four sleep at the same time?
Everybody sleeps.
There are periods where nobody is awake to keep an eye on things?
Not only are there periods where nobody's awake to keep an eye on everything, there's also periods where the capsule rotates to maximize sun capture at different times. And that can result in situations where, let's see, they can broadcast to Earth, but Earth can't broadcast back to them, or I think vice versa. I'm not sure if it happens the other way. I've only seen it the one way. But like last night after they went to bed, they were like, we're going to be in a one-way communication period for a while. So like we won't be able to talk to you all. But like the alarms go off, the smoke alarm went off yesterday when they were packing stuff up and had knocked up some dust apparently. And I don't think you would have missed the smoke alarm going off, it turns out.
Fair.
Even if you were asleep.
My two kind of small moments that are going to stick with me is yesterday they reported a burning smell coming from the toilet, and no one knows what that is. And I just think there was nothing more relatable to being like, there's a weird smell coming from the toilet to a normie like me. And
God, I can't imagine hey guys, we invented a new way to make toilets bad.
I like those small moments. And then the other thing, and this is super nerdy me, is so when you launch a ship like this, you obviously have these intricately plotted, math equations around the orbital diagrams, but you obviously have the ability to do some control burns to do trajectory correction. So they've only had to do 2 burns to correct the trajectory this entire mission. That's how good we got the math. And I'm like, I want to go like find like the orbital trajectory guys and like shake their hand. I'm like, that is awesome. Like we got the math so right. I don't know. Maybe I'm too Andy Weird up in this moment, but I was like, we nailed the math.
Well, there's also the other thing that I've been trying to think about why this interaction, why getting to watch these interactions is so meaningful to me. And I think for me, that comes back to it's, the Gene Roddenberry vision of Star Trek is that there's no interpersonal conflict on the Enterprise, right? Like everybody's working toward a common goal and they get to get along because we've worked that part of humanity out. We don't do that anymore. And like these four people and the people on the ground at home and all that are like, it comes through. Like it shows a way to work with other people that doesn't involve conflict and doesn't involve getting upset with everybody and trusting the people on your team to know that the thing that they're telling you is the right thing to do. And you see that both in the communications, but like in how the astronauts are interacting with each other. So you don't get a lot of voice from the capsule. You get a lot of voice when they're talking back and forth to mission and control, but we don't hear a lot of their interpersonal stuff. But clearly, like these folks have trained together for 2 or 3 years at this point. They've known each other for a long time. I think Jeremy and Christina are in the same astronaut class, so they went through like initial astronaut training together. And like as a result, they have the kind of working rapport that is just it's just incredible. That they have in jokes, they know each other, they finish each other's sandwiches, right? It's good stuff all the way around. Should we talk about the communication? Because this is interesting. I didn't realize that we were doing this yet, but they're using DSN, the Deep Space Network, to talk to the land, to the orbiter, to the capsule. Because once you get beyond low Earth orbit, we have to have different communication systems. So they're tasked a bunch of those big antennas that talk to things like Voyager and Curiosity and Perseverance and all the rovers around the solar system are being used to talk to Artemis now. But they also have this new thing called the O2O, which is a infrared laser based array of transmitters and satellites and receivers, and they're able to get really high throughputs with that, unlike anything we've really ever seen before from space.
I mean, I think like a really high. It's 100 gigabits per second max.
I think that's the theoretical maximum. I don't think they're actually doing that. Yeah. But it seems like they're using that to dump some of the big images and like do those. Basically, it seems like they have a way to dump data from their laptops or from their surfaces back to Earth really quickly.
Is that bidirectional? Do you know? Or I assume that's probably one way.
I think it's bidirectional.
Oh.
It is bidirectional. There's 2 ground stations. One's in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and one's somewhere in the desert of California. I can't remember exactly where, but they have like minimal cloud coverage so that the lasers have the best kind of least interfered with kind of line of sight to those areas. First of all, we have to start calling this system the space laser system. Like I know,
yeah.
like
freaking space lasers, man. The FSL.
But what's amazing is like it is truly like a network. I think there's 6 different satellites that are coordinated to actually link up this delivery. There's the O2O. There's I think it's called the T-Bird, the LCRD. I think there's another like LLCD. Like so, there's a bunch of different relays happening up there too. So we have somehow like taken the lessons of like Cisco networking and applied it to space by like having things route through multiple systems and before landing to their intended target.
Yeah, I should say real quick, I looked at the NASA site. Like I guess currently they are getting about 260 megabits per second, which not quite 100 gigabits, but that's still faster than a lot of people's home internet.
260 megabits is an order of magnitude faster than what they had before. Is to like that's the TLDR on this is that you're getting a lot more speed than they've ever had before, especially out of the DSN, which is like optimized for distance, not speed.
And this is the thing they tested on Artemis 1. And so this is sort of like the thing they knew was expecting to work really well. But this is like our first experience of the outputs of that. In a kind of human way. So this is all these missions kind of build on each other in that way.
Okay, I have a question I've been waiting to ask you guys, and this is just a gut feeling. What do you think will happen? But this brings a bunch of threads together from this discussion. on the subject of cameras and communications back with Earth and building on subsequent missions, by the time we get to Artemis 4, do you think we get head mount live streaming of a moonwalk?
Oh, I guarantee we have live streaming of the moonwalk.
From a suit, though? Or even handhelds would be
my guess.
I think there's cameras on the suits,
you
for sure.
Think?
But, like, the live stream, like, I think it, like, if I don't know if there's, like, a clear... Like, yeah, there would be, right?
Because the moon never sets on the moon, on the near side of the moon. The Earth never sets on the near side of the moon.
I 100%. That's what it's going to be.
That's exciting.
I mean, look, here's the thing: the excitement that normal people have had. Like I put this on the other night, and my wife was like, "Why are we watching? Like, this is a weird thing to watch, right?" And I was like, "No, just trust me. You're going to enjoy this." And she's like, "Did they ever?" Just the kind of questions you get about how this works, right? How do they do this is fascinating from somebody who doesn't really pay attention to it. So yeah, they're absolutely going to live stream the moonwalks. I mean, there's no like argument for doing it for privacy. NASA has to publish stuff within X number of hours after they receive it, outside of a few things like the National Geographic documentary. There's no safety, like in terms of danger. It's not, I mean, yes, it's incredibly dangerous to do that. It's not any more dangerous than, live streaming the launch or the landing.
Yeah. I meant mainly just from the standpoint of, are there any more technical limitations to overcome? And I guess not. I mean, actually, like getting the video from the suit back to the lander might actually, I mean, if you tethered it with a cable, you'd be fine, I guess. I don't know about a wireless.
Just do Wi-Fi.
I guess Wi-Fi would work fine. I don't know.
There's no interference there, man. You can do Wi-Fi 7. You get really 300 meters full range. It's perfect.
Is that the first view you want? Do you want like the kind of front-facing view, or do you want like the Apollo 11 view of Neil Armstrong coming down the ladder?
All I know, I want the view of the person coming down the ladder. I want to see the mundanity. I want to see the work. I want to see them do the work on the moon. That's the thing I want to see.
You want the like full on like terraforming Mars like video game like resource allocation and building kind of aspect of this. Like this is like a worker engine game. Like if things go well in like 10 years.
I mean, yeah, like am I going to watch the live feed of the landers coming down with the habitats that are unbuilt but have to be assembled by people? Probably not. But will I watch the people assemble them? Yeah, you're damn right I will. I'm going to put that on the wall TV when that's a thing.
I want the heightened feeling of opening Twitch and just being able to watch the perspective of somebody live walking around on another celestial body. I mean, that's, that kind of speaks for itself.
So I kind of have like a wrap-up question. Like, I initially came to Artemis very skeptically. Not just this mission, the whole program. It's like, I think estimates are...
It's all been goofy. Like hey, we're going to use space shuttle engines, which are incredibly expensive and over-engineered to be reused, and we're going to put them on these disposable boosters. It's like, it starts with bad ideas.
Yeah, I think the estimates are like, it's like $93 billion to do this program, even though they think the next steps can be done for $20 billion. These are, insane numbers. The timeline is questionable. Like there's
the landers are still iffy. Like,
as much as we talked about the motivations, like I think one can question the motivations of like, do we really need this to practically? Has things shifted for you after this mission?
For me personally, I would feel a lot better about this if it wasn't timed with a defunding of NASA's Earth Science and Climate Observatory kind of requirements and a larger defunding of science across the entire United States government. Like in the Apollo era, we as both parties, everyone involved, seemed to view spending money on expanding human knowledge of the world, whether it's medical or biological or earth sciences or geology or physics, whatever, as a way to succeed on the global political stage. And the modern conservative agenda does not seem to align with that anymore, which I think is a real enormous mistake on multiple levels. And that's the thing that leaves me feeling bad after this, is that, yeah, it's great we're spending money here. There's funding this and defunding all the other science it feels stunty to me.
Stunty, or like I said earlier, perhaps certain interests see a lot of money to be made in the wake of these breakthroughs.
So I feel differently. And I'm surprised to say that. And I'm caught up in the moment. And I think I'm caught up in the emotion of this right now. Sure. And so maybe a couple weeks from now, I'll gain some perspective. But I think this is awesome. I know we're all saying it's awesome. But I think the awesome part of this is it illustrates like a really clear, simple vision of what comes next. That people can really like grab onto and hold onto. And there's such like a element of communication and access embedded in this that I think people crave, that we've seen in this last week. Now, I think that'll turn to something much more mundane, that like what Brad, you were saying, like we're going to turn on a Twitch stream and see some guy bolting an element of a hab together in a few years. And we'll be like, I'm going to go watch the guy playing Arc Raiders instead. Like, but I don't know. There's something exciting about the potential unity that we saw come out of this moment of people all turning towards this kind of positive, collaborative endeavor that gets me excited about the return in a way that I wasn't just a week ago. 100%. I reserve the right to change my mind on that for all the reasons you laid out, Will, and more. But I think, as the Grinch so wisely said, my heart grew 3 sizes.
I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? Like you can still True. You can still be skeptical of the motives and the execution and the context in which the mission is being launched, and still think the ultimate outcome of it is a net good for humanity, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I could just real quick jump in with this Scientific American piece.
It was really good. It was super interesting. Speaking
of some positive, universally positive kind of downstream effects of this, I'll put it in the show notes. They ran a piece where, again, they talked to some astronomers who were just like, wow, money just appeared out of nowhere for projects that leverage being on the moon all of a sudden. Weird. Like, this does not happen in space exploration. But some of the projects that are in the works or close to even launch in one case, there is I don't have any of the names in front of me. These projects are all named in the article, but there is a very large radio telescope that's being readied for launch. Maybe, Kishore, you're nodding. You might know more about this than I do, for potentially even as soon as December to be installed on the far side of the moon. In fact, I think all these projects are targeted for the far side because, for the same reason that the spacecraft lose communications on the far side, it turns out that's a really great place to shield instruments from all the cacophonous radio chatter coming from Earth.
Also, the sheer distance gives us some ability to do triangulation in a different way. So one of the projects is an extension of the LIGO project that saw the two kind of that kind of witnessed gravitational waves and put sound to it.
Yes.
And we can essentially extend that array by the sheer distance and having a larger bell to ring, essentially, for gravitational waves from across the universe. So we get advantages from the being on the far side from like the radiation and getting away from the atmosphere, but also just from the distance.
Sure. So yeah, that's the second project on here. I think they said that will give them the ability to detect like more mid-range gravitational waves that they would never have a prayer of seeing from Earth.
Yeah, the benefit of doing the radio telescope on the moon is that you don't have atmospheric ionization, which blocks out certain radio frequencies. So they can see things that we can't see normally with the radios.
Right. So the use of that radio telescope would be to see, basically we can see the cosmic microwave background, which happened right after like the plasma started, allowing light to bounce around. But as soon as everything turned into like a giant volume of hydrogen, there's some huge period of time where we just can't see anything before stars and galaxies started forming. And this would potentially allow us to see the very, very faint light that existed in, I think they kind of call it like the Dark Age.
Like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Brad.
Like the kind of Dark Age after the Big Bang, where there was not much light bouncing around.
It's one of my favorite terms, the quark gluon plasma. And this would be a nice complement to the James Webb Space Telescope that's also looking at similar things.
Yeah, and so the last one, again, I don't have the name here, but the last project they talked about in that article is a basically kind of moon scale optical interferometry telescope, which is the thing where you have telescopes in different parts of the world that all triangulate together that kind of focus all of their observations together to make one image. This would apparently be like a rover mounted version of that, where they would be able to move the mirrors around on the surface of the moon to kind of focus on different spots.
That one seems wild to me.
Yeah, that one sounds very more theoretical. I think that one, I'd have to pull the article back. I think that was the one that's the farthest out and maybe in the earliest theoretical stages of planning.
Just to be clear, the LIGO one is also wild because the plan for that is to drop a lander on the moon and that has 2 rovers in it and send the rovers out in like 45-degree angle off of each other on the edge of a crater and then shoot lasers 5 kilometers back to the rover. So you have a triangle of lasers. And because the moon is seismically inert and there's no atmosphere, that'll just work. They don't have to build like an enormous underground complex or anything like that, like they did with LIGO here on Earth. So
there's a lot of weirdly beneficial qualities about the moon, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a hostile place, but there are some like really interesting problems that I think are more in the engineering world than the science world. Like there's this really great video NASA did on like the future of building the kind of hub on the moon, and they talked about things like power. So we're going to have nuclear power sources up there because there isn't enough light. They're going to have some element of solar and the battery storage and what that looks like. They're even talking about using the moon regolith and potentially building something that would be akin to a 3D printer where you'd actually be able to sinter some of the material together and use that to help form structures. So there's some really wild engineering that is ahead of all of this. And they're actually building a lunar rover that is very much out of the Martian, that will have atmosphere in it at normal ambient temperatures. So you could just be out of a suit in your t-shirt and hang out in. And so none of this stuff has been built yet. So it's still science fiction, but it's all possible because it's in the world of engineering. It's not in the world of scientific research.
There's nothing needed to make it happen beyond the will and the money. It's interesting. The other thing that's interesting about the moon is that it is like, it seems like a phenomenally far distance from us because, you know, we're used to Earth scale where 25,000 miles is the circumference of the planet. The moon is 250,000 kilometers away. Mars averages miles away. Sorry. Mars averages 140 million miles away. So it's, you know, significantly further. It's an 18-month trip instead of a 10-day trip, round trip. 18-month one-way trip, just to be clear. So yeah, the idea of using it as a stepping stone and learning how to do the hard part of living in this hostile environment, someplace that's only 10 days away, seems like it makes sense to me. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
All right. I will give one piece of advice, and this is my pushback. Like, I know it's natural to think that this is a stepping stone to Mars. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that for a second. Like, I understand there's like elements of like radiation shielding and like building structures and power and all this kind of stuff that would help us. I think they're fundamentally really different problem spaces that while some of the learning will help, I think our imagination naturally goes there. And I am really resisting that because I think the problem space is pretty dynamically different.
Like just in terms of scale and scope? Temperature,
atmosphere, like distance, radiation, like there's some real like things on the table that make the journey, let alone the landing, much more different problem spaces.
Okay. So I mean, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap it up. Hold on, we got to talk about Nutella. We promised we'd talk about Nutella. There were a couple of meme-worthy moments early on in the flight, and one of them was when I think Christina Cook was packing up a lunch, like she was packing up stuff after they had a shared meal, because they do book them most days a shared lunch where they can all sit down and eat together and have a moment to kind of chat and conference is what NASA says whenever people need to talk to each other. And as she was packing up, a jar of what just looked like normal ass Nutella broke loose and floated across the cabin and went into the other side. And then a little while later, I think Mission Control had to tell them, "Hey, go get the Nutella from over on such and such part of the cabin." But the internet, like, what we learned when we went to Houston to eat space food a long time ago with Tested, they do a lot of like flatbreads and tortillas and pitas and stuff like that with some sort of food-based goo smeared on them so they can stick stuff into it.
Some kind of cohesion, I guess, like rice is maybe not the best idea.
But I think they said rice pilaf is one of the more common things that they eat. I kind of wonder
if it's sticky enough. Sure.
Yeah. It's everything has to be a certain amount of goopy. But they do a lot of sandwiches where they take a piece of flatbread and smear something on it and then stick something else in that something. So apparently the Nutella is a popular item for that because, who doesn't love Nutella?
I think we heard from Chris Hadfield a bunch of times, the Canadian astronaut, about how much like things smell and taste different aboard, just because of the confined space and the way that things work. So
reduced pressure and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of different factors, but I think the funny thing is like Nutella in the company immediately took to Instagram and like rebranded like now enjoyed in space. And then like people have been calculating like the cost of that jar of Nutella based on like how much fuel we're spending per kilogram. And so it's probably like $1,000 jar of Nutella. Not that we should calculate it that way, but Nutella is good everywhere is my takeaway.
They learned in the Skylab days what happens if you don't give the astronauts good food. I don't know if you've ever been to the Air and Space Museum in DC and have seen the exhibit of foods served on Skylab. It was grim to the point that like 3 of the astronauts there at one point went on strike because they were sick of working 7 days a week and eating garbage food. Those folks never flew again, weirdly, but they just turned off the radio one day, a couple of days apparently.
Wow.
The food stuff is fascinating. There was a good video on the live stream last night during one of the downtimes where they went to the food lab and they showed them astronauts tasting all the different foods and deciding which stuff they liked, which stuff they'd eat if they were told they had to, and which stuff they would never eat no matter what. And I think they said there are 189 unique menu items and 10 different beverages on this flight. So there's a lot of food and a lot of food variety. They're not just eating, space gruel.
That's like a Cheesecake Factory size menu. That's too much. That's too much food.
And on that note, I guess that's it. Let's see. Anything else? The lander systems update. Ours had a really good article that went up the second day of this mission where Eric Berger interviewed Lori Glaze, who's a director, associate director, I guess, assistant director. I can't remember, about what's going on with the landers. There's 2 competing initiatives, one from SpaceX and one from Blue, about Blue Origin about building landers. And they're both racing for the Artemis 3, like in space docking. It's unclear to me what happens if they both are ready in time for that. Like, are they going to fire both from up there and then do a double docking? Or
I guess it's naive of me to think that I assumed the lander was just kind of solved already, but I guess
no,
definitely not.
No, definitely not. And like the indications are that whoever wins that race will get the contract for like the next 10 years of flight. So it's a pretty like high stakes situation between those 2 companies right now.
There was a little bit of shade in there about SpaceX not responding to PR requests from ours. And the NASA administrator was like, yeah, we know. It's like, you got to deal with it. Anyway, I guess that's it for us. Kishore, thank you as always for coming by. You got anything to plug, or you're
I have nothing to plug, and I couldn't be happier that I have nothing to plug.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you, my friend, and thank you for coming by. We will have to have you on again sometime soon. It's always great to talk science with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and best of luck to the astronauts as they return. And I look forward to that picture of them emerging from the capsule in a day or two.
Yeah, that's hopefully everything goes well on the landing. That's the last scary bit. Splashdown. Sorry, it's not a landing. Got to use the proper terms. Thank you so much, Kishore, for coming by. It's wonderful to see you. Brad, This is the time of the show where we thank our patrons and encourage everyone to go to patreon.com/techpod and sign up to support the show. We do this ad free. So that means if you guys don't think we're worth $5 a month, then we don't see any money from it. So, it's nice to get paid. It turns out.
That's right.
Patreon.com/techpod is the URL. And I used to say it was like a cup of coffee, but I went to Starbucks the other day and got a cup of coffee, and it's less than a cup of coffee now.
That's right.
Significantly so.
Yes. And unlike Artemis, we are not taxpayer funded. So
no, I mean, we're open to that, I guess.
Sure. But, government grants, anybody listening.
Yeah, but we want to thank everybody who supports the show. We appreciate each and every one of you, but we especially appreciate our executive producer tier patrons, including OpenAI Delenda Est, Andrew Slosky, Jordan Lippett, Octothorpe Bunny Jerk, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. Thank you also so much.
Yes, thank you.
Brad, that'll do it for us this week. I hope your recovery continues apace.
Yeah,
and
there.
You sound great. You look good.
Thank you.
You look reasonably comfortable.
Yeah, I've debated. I mean, I thought about not wearing this brace on live streams, but
no, you should wear the brace on live streams.
Might as well just embrace it.
Yeah, embrace the brace. That's what we say here.
That's right.
I've tested.
That's right.
And that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Tech Pod. As always, please consider the environment before printing this podcast.